And everybody that's done this has gone home with money. May not have gone home with more than what they left. Some have. It stops the cycle of always playing down the zero to chase the big win. By law, all progressives have to be paid back to the player. The casino cannot just keep whatever added progressives there are. In randomness, there has to be swings. If you didn't have swings of hot and cold, then I would question if it was actually random or not.
Welcome back, everybody, to the SlotsFan Podcast. We're so excited today. We've got one of our, well, at least one half of our favorite channel on the show. It's Marc from Gamble Smart. Thank you so much, Marc. I was telling you before the show, I think you and Dave have been on the show more times than anyone else, and you're responsible for more views on our channel than anyone else. So we're so happy to have you back. It's always a pleasure learning from you and Dave when you come on the show.
It's my pleasure, man. It's glad to be back. Thanks for inviting us back anytime.
So you're so well known for debunking myths and bringing, accurate, real information to slots players in a space that, admittedly has its fair share of superstitions and myths. We've got a bunch of really cool topics to talk to you about today. I'm excited to chat about RTP and volatility and how that plays into bankroll management and people's expectations when they go to the casino. But first, I wanted to start with a fun 20 questions game that I put together. We've gathered the most common 20 myths about slot machines that we keep hearing, and I wanted to hit you with them kind of rapid fire style and see if there's any truth at all to some of these. So maybe a groan, a one-word answer, or a short, short explanation.
Did you say a groan? You want me to groan?
Well, after I collected some of these, they might get a natural groan out of you.
That's all right. That's all right. I totally get it.
These are 20 questions. These are the most common slot myths. So, starting with number one. Small wins mean the machine is in a good cycle and it's paying out.
False.
Casinos can remotely tighten or loosen a slot machine.
Mostly false, with some caveats.
Okay,
We can talk about that later.
I'm going to take notes of any caveats, and we can.
If you want to, I can expand on that a little bit, but mostly false.
Machines near doors or aisles pay more.
That's false.
Using a player's card reduces your chances of winning.
False. Are there any true ones in there?
I don't think so. If someone just hit a jackpot on a machine, it's not going to hit again for a really long time.
That's also false.
If you know what to look for, you can actually read a machine's behavior over time.
Only a very small number of advantage play slots is that possible. But the majority, 95% on the floor, no, you cannot do that.
Okay, I'm making a note of that.
Okay, fair enough.
Changing your bet confuses the machine and might trigger a bonus.
No.
Slot attendants know which machines are hot.
Definitely not. They may think they know, but they don't.
Okay. Casinos punish winners by tightening up the machines.
No, they can't do that.
Okay, this one's kind of like one before, but you can trick the machine with a secret pattern or rhythm for that game.
Boy, I wish, but of course the answer is to no to that. Absolutely not.
Okay, someone used the slot machine right after me and won the jackpot. That should have been my jackpot.
Well, technically it should have been right. No, that's false. You would have had to hit it at the exact precise same moment that they did. It's frustrating, but the answer is false.
Okay, we're almost there. Hot and cold machines actually exist.
So this is one to take a note on too, because there's an explanation to it. So programmatically, no, but do they behave that way? Yes.
Okay. Near misses means that the machine's getting close to paying out.
No.
Timing your spin just right can change the result.
The answer to that is true, but it's not a predictable time. If that makes sense.
Like it will change the outcome, but you can't use it to your advantage.
Yeah, it'll change the outcome because it could have been it's about the microsecond that you push the spin button or pull a handle. So it does change the outcome based on when you press the button, but it's not in a predictable way. You can't wait 5 seconds and then push it and expect well, that's going to be the trick, right? So
okay. So if timing your spin doesn't work, I'm sure that stopping the reels at the right time can help you win.
Definitely not. That's the one everybody believes, and you can see it in the casino with we witness people like go up to it and like they're staring at it and they've got their hand, just like they're playing an arcade game or something. But no, it's the moment that you commit to the bet, that microsecond that you hit the button, it's decided what the result's going to be. Everything's eye candy after that. So there's nothing you can do to fast stop.
Okay.
People swear by it, though.
Louder volume improves your chances of winning.
Definitely not. No way.
Bonus teases means a bonus is coming, which I think means like when you're getting close to the number.
Yeah,
of bonus.
You get a lot of two. There is a reason why it does that, but it doesn't tell you anything. Okay. So the answer is no.
And the final one, max betting increases your chances of winning.
Ooh, there's some caveats to that one too. Mm-hmm. In general, no. But if max betting covers things that you would not get eligible for by not max betting, then the answer to that is true.
Okay.
So bonus rounds, progressives, free games, respins, like some of these features are cooked into that max bet. Mm-hmm. And if you're not doing that, if you're not covering all the features of the game, then you are definitely impeding your potential return on that game. So that's when it does matter. But all things being equal, it doesn't make any difference.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that we debunked a lot of those myths. I don't know if I believed any of them, but I do hear a lot of those ones like over and over again, like especially.
Oh, man, you should read our comments section. Oof.
Okay, so why don't you take this chance to talk about some of those caveats, because it's kind of interesting. It's like you can see why some superstitions or myths do get propagated, because sometimes there are elements of truth or it can be confusing to people. So I think that one, the betting higher, improving your chances of winning is one that comes up a lot, maybe because like you said, it is true in certain cases. I'm curious, like, you say it may increase or it may make you eligible for different parts of the prizes. Does it actually change like your RTP on the game? Is it improving your odds of winning as well?
Yeah, so the RTP is factored off of that full coverage, right? So if you are not covering, the example I like to use is a lot of people have probably played the Hot Tamales, it's like Hot Tamales respin. There's basically 3 different bonuses cooked into that one. There's the stacked sevens, there's the respin, and then there's the progressives. And if you only bet minimum, regardless of which denomination you're on, you're not eligible for any of those. So you have effectively killed your potential return on that game, because the features are where you get the money, right? Other examples, pinball, top dollar, Wheel of Fortune. By not betting max, you are not covering that bonus. And so you are effectively, again, killing your potential return. They don't adjust the return based on you not betting enough credits. At least most games are. Some of the newer ones, they do adjust it a little bit. The new pinball double gold that came out a couple of years ago is like that. So based on the number of lines you play, you will see some changes in how it plays. But most likely on most games that you play, if you are not betting max and it requires you to do so to hit a bonus or a progressive, you're killing yourself. And that's probably the hardest thing for me to see on YouTube when I watch. And I have to hold back restraint to be a warrior in the comments section to tell these guys. But, seeing people play double top dollar, for example, and they're betting 1 credit, I mean, it just kills me, because it's not like playing just double diamond. You're playing an alternate version of double diamond that has a bonus attached to it. And it's the double diamond base game is not the same as a double diamond without the bonus, for example. So it's absolutely critical that people understand that they need to make sure in the game rules or on the glass or on the bet panel, whatever, look at it and make sure that you're betting enough to cover everything that's possible to get on that game. And if that requires you to go down in denomination to do so, then you better do that.
Yeah.
Or you're killing your potential return.
So I got a couple of questions about that. Is it true that if you are betting, if you're not betting to the threshold that's unlocking all that stuff, your RTP is actually like a lot lower than the posted RTP correct. For that game, because it's all factoring in?
That is correct. There are very few exceptions in some of the newer games, but largely speaking, that is true. You are effectively cutting, I don't know what the percentage is, but if you think about top dollar, for example, I mean, people that have played top dollar long enough know that the way you get money off of that game is not with the line hits. It's with the bonus. And if you don't get the bonus, you're not going to start suddenly getting more frequent line hits. That's not the way it works.
Do you think there are people playing it and wondering why they're not hitting the bonus because they're actually not eligible for it?
Oh, yeah. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
We see it. We see confusion on their face. They look up and they see nothing's happening. They call the slot attendant over saying the machine's broken. It's like, machine's not broken. You're just not betting enough. A lot of times it's on accident. I've done it. Dave's done it where we've sat down at a game and whoever was playing it before was not max betting. And so we just hit the spin reels button and it's betting 1 credit. So we've been punished that way, you know. But yeah, it is crucial to make sure that you are getting all of the features of the game because that's where the RTP is set at. And if you're not getting that coverage, yikes. I mean, 20-30% is gone. You know, you're just really killing yourself. So,
I mean, it's interesting because people, you know, you're not going to say you're a good slots player necessarily. Like it's not a strategy thing, but it definitely seems like there are knowledge things that can they can make a difference. This is a good example of something that if you don't know it, it's really going to hurt your.
It's about playing smart. I mean, that's the whole concept of, you know, we get comments all the time where people are like, gamble smart. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The only way to gamble smart is not to gamble at all. All right, I get that. But if you are going to gamble, like we can't force you into it, but there are a lot of gamblers out there, right? And we feel if you're educated about what you're playing, I mean, I always use this example. Let's say that you have never played blackjack in your entire life. You don't know anything about the game. Would you sit down at a blackjack table and start making bets? You probably wouldn't because you wouldn't know what you're doing. You're going to be putting money on the line, making bad decisions, lowering your RTP on that game because you're splitting kings or doing weird stuff like that, you know. Slot machines, they're not as sophisticated as a table game. You know, table games require a lot of rules and strategies to learn the maximum potential out of those games. Largely, slot machines are just pushing a button, but it's not exactly always like that, right? We just got through talking about the importance of max betting on games that require you to do so to activate bonus rounds. But there's a lot of other stuff like the people that chase the pigs and the firecrackers and all that kind of stuff thinking that there's some kind of advantage. If you didn't know that, you're more likely to sit at that machine and continue to play and play and play thinking it's close to popping, right? That's not gambling smart. That's not learning the game. It's not going through the game rules and understanding how the mechanics work and all that kind of stuff. So there absolutely is stuff on slot machines that you can do to increase your chances of at least walking away with some cash. Now, you know, it's gambling. Slot machines are the worst game to play in a casino. We all know that. But if you at least maximize it by learning the game and learning how all the mechanics work and all of these things, then you'll end up being better for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, later in the interview, I'm excited to talk a bit about how, you know, the way that games play versus people's expectations of how they play and how that relates to people's bankrolls and, you know, the way that they behave after losing what's probably a typical amount on a game, but maybe not having a clear expectation. One thing that you mentioned, though, that I think is important is when we say max bet, we don't necessarily mean like the max dollar amount betting on the machine, but rather you can lower the denomination and bet max with that low denomination and still unlock those extra bonuses or whatever. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we're talking within a single denomination. So whenever you do pick a denomination on a game, you look down. I'm talking about most games these days. You look down and on the button panel, you're going to see a layout of different credit values. Some good games, the ones that I think are the best, will actually outline, you know, in order to be eligible for the grand, you got to bet this, right? Some don't do that as much. And so you have to kind of go in the game rules and see how much you need to wager. Sometimes it's 180 credits or 300, 600 credits, whatever the case is. But that's within the denomination. But you bring up a really good point that I want to talk about. And we get this question every single week on our Wednesday live streams when we do our Q&As, is people ask us, should I be raising my denomination? Am I going to win more, or am I going to have better odds by raising my denomination, going from $1 to $5, $5 to $10, whatever the case is? And it's a tricky answer because technically speaking, if you take away everything, technically speaking, the answer is your odds are better the higher the denomination you play. Most casinos set it up that way. But the caveat to that is that You won't notice it in the short term. And we'll talk about this later when we get to RTP. But in the short term, you're not going to notice some sudden jump going from $1 to $5 or even $1 to $10. Now, a lot of people say, I don't know. As soon as I switch, I start getting bonus rounds. That was purely coincidence, that happened. We hear both sides of it. Why is it that as soon as I raise my bet, I start getting bonus rounds? And then 2 questions later, why is it when I lower my bet, I start getting bonus rounds? It's randomness. That's what's going on there, But our brains, and this is a fascinating topic for me, but our brains are tuned to be pattern seeking. We're just built that way. We're built to look for patterns, especially with things that we don't understand or can't comprehend. And randomness is one of those things. Unless you had heavy math and you understand statistics and all that kind of stuff, it's very difficult and challenging for the average human being to understand the idea and the concept of randomness. And boy, do slot machine manufacturers and casinos exploit the hell out of that. I mean, that's why these games are built the way they are, because they show you things that you think are patterns, and you will start to act on that. And so in the case of you raising your bet, you've been betting $3 a spin, and suddenly you go to $15 a spin, but you get a bonus round within a couple of spins. Your brain has made that connection, right? Your brain has told you, I did that. By me raising my bet, that activated the bonus round. That's not what happened. It was just purely coincidental, and you got really lucky. But our brains make that connection, and then the trap is set, if that makes sense. Like, it's at that point, we feel like that's where I got to stay. Whatever reason, the $5 denomination is the one that gets all the bonus rounds right now, so I better stay there. Yeah. And that's a false thing. That's a very dangerous thing to think of, because you're just going to fall off the cliff.
Do you know if like that kind of mechanism of trying to see patterns, do you think it's more powerful when it's connected to positive outcomes? It's like we want to look for ways that we can trigger a positive outcome, and we don't notice all the times we switched bets and nothing happened, really. Yeah,
it's called confirmation bias. It's a fascinating topic. I've done a lot of reading on it for the last couple of years, because it's very prevalent in casino gaming, especially with slot machines. And the quick, and I do recommend you guys go out there and do some research on this, because I think, just spend 10, 15 minutes reading some stuff about what confirmation bias is, but I'll summarize real quick. So the idea here, and this is really hard to believe, but it is true. Once we validate ourselves several times, let's say that we use that same example going from $1 to $5, and we do it 3 different casino visits. And for whatever reason, we get lucky, and every single time that we do it for 3 times in a row, it works. Okay, we went from $1 to $5, we started getting bonus rounds, right? Your brain has then validated that. It's made that link that we just talked about. And so what happens is your faith system that's built into all of us it's totally overpowering that, to the point where when it doesn't happen, your brain just slips it on by and you don't remember it. We see examples of this all the time. We got somebody in the comments the other day and said, I am convinced that casinos can change the payback percentage and cause more bonuses at any time whenever there's a certain number of people there or whatever. And I reply back, I'm like, unfortunately they can't. Well, fortunately for us, they can't do that, right? That's not something that's allowed. It's not something that they do. They don't have that kind of fine level control where they can say, oh, time to turn the bonuses on in the progressives and then time to turn them off. It doesn't work that way. But she was so convinced, because she said, I've been gambling for 20 years, and every time the bus comes with all the little old ladies with their Social Security checks come in, they suddenly start hitting bonus rounds. And then as soon as they leave, all the bonuses stop. And it's hard to combat that, because I know that she's falling into confirmation bias there. But how do you get her to be convinced otherwise? You can't at that point, because her brain is so sure and so positive that she has ruled out all the times where the little old ladies show up and they're not getting bonus rounds, right? And it's just, then it just gets worse and worse and worse. The longer you believe something like that, the worse it gets, because you are continuously seeking that validation. Your brain is, whether you're looking for it or not. And then it just becomes ingrained in how you believe all this stuff works. And that's the challenge that we have, is we can pump out all this information, and a lot of people are saying, well, you repeat yourselves. Like every time you do a video and you talk about something, and I'm like, yeah, but that's the only way we're going to break through this.
And still nobody
saying it over and over and over again. Yeah, and then finally you may say, well, wait a minute, maybe there is something else going on here. And there's been a lot of people that have realized that, and that's a good feeling, right? It's like getting them out of the hole, making them smarter about their play, and don't let these things consume you because they're built that way. And you better believe casinos put them on the floor in a way that logic and reasoning just goes out the window. Like that's how casinos are built, right? It's intended to be that way, right? So I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it's like
it's really interesting. I'm curious.
Confirmation bias is very strong. It's very powerful. It's something we all have, different levels of it, and it's not just in this; it's in everything. I mean, I
was going to say you don't have to look too far.
You hear it throw out a topic. My mom is a quilter. She goes on and on about stuff that I know is not true, but I mean, how can I argue with her? She's been quilting for 30 years. She's so convinced that this is the way to do it. And I'm like, well, there's actually a different way. No. This is the only way it works. It's like, you can't, it's too late. It's too late to try to pull somebody back from that. But we try to catch people that are especially at least open to the idea that something else is going on, and are willing to kind of explore with it. And again, it doesn't even matter if we show proof. I'm working on a video right now showing RTP on all these machines that I have behind me that I've played 10,000, 12,000 pulls on. And the results are very surprising. You know, it's proof. Like, it will show you that in the short term, it does not matter. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but in the short term, it does not matter. And you can show them proof right in front of their face, and they still think something else is going on. And that's that confirmation bias. And that's why I can't get mad at anybody. I can't get frustrated at anybody. I can't say, oh man, you're an idiot. I can't say that because I know what's going on. I understand how they got there, and hopefully we can say something to bring them back.
It's also the case that we're all suffering from it in one way or another. Like you're saying, it applies to everything that we do all the time.
Yes.
I'm curious when, you mentioned when you're playing a machine that doesn't unlock maybe 30% of the RTP, for example, if you're not betting up to a certain amount. Do you think that is the casino incentivized to not make that clear to you? Because I'm curious, because maybe they would prefer you actually betting max, because even though the margin is lower, you're going to lose more money maybe. How does that translate to like how they actually communicate that fact to you on the machine?
Yeah. Well, that wouldn't be on the casino. That would be on the slot manufacturers and the game designers. There are rules. There are rules that they have to abide by. They can't have secret bets, or they can't, for example, they can't put a respin feature in, but it's only activated on max bet and then not listed anywhere. Mm-hmm. Like that kind of stuff by law has to be printed somewhere, usually on the glass, like on the game or on the bet panel. But sometimes they can put it inside of like the game menu for information and stuff like that. But there are I don't know where all the guidelines are because I'm not a game designer, but there are definitely rules and regulations on what they are allowed to put in there and some that aren't. My biggest beef is with the, which I do think is manipulative, is we were talking about the firecrackers and the pigs and the hens and all this stuff, the quick hit dollar signs, all those. They're all an illusion. It has no bearing whatsoever on when the bonus is coming, but that's what it looks like, right?
This persistence feature that you see so much.
Yeah, it's perceived persistence. Yeah. So it's not actually persistent, it's perceived, which means it's all an illusion. It's just a graphic thing. And they have to put it in the game rules somewhere, but it's like a word salad, the way they explain it. No average person is going to be able to read that sentence and understand what it means.
Yeah, I also feel like we can't even wrap our heads around how that, like, what it really means, because like it goes back to one of the first myths that we talked about, which is like it hasn't hit for a long time, so it's due. You can tell people everything's independent, but how can it be possible that if it hasn't hit in forever, that it isn't more likely to hit somehow? It's something. It's hard to figure out there. I also meant to say before. Yeah. You mentioned everyone likes to argue with you in the comments. We invite everyone that's watching to come argue with us in the comments and let us know what you think about all these myths, because there is nuance to a lot of them, and there's a lot of people who maybe have their own reasons for believing some of them. So we'd love to hear the viewers' opinions about these myths and other things that they've encountered that we could debunk or talk about in future episodes.
It's super important. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's very important that we all are open and transparent and talk about this. Even if you believe against what we're saying so strongly, make your point, and we will offer an alternative view on it. Now, you don't have to believe anybody. I mean, there are a lot of the comments that I reply to, I just say, you probably will never believe me, but in case you want to look further, here is a document you can read that explains what's going on. And it works for some people, doesn't work for others. But unless we're out there talking about it, and nobody's going to be rude to you and say you're an idiot for believing stuff, that's not how we get better, right? But it's important to get your views out there. If there's any things that we don't cover in this video today, any myths that you're curious about, put it in the comments. We'll do it in another video, or I'll be on there watching, and I'll reply to you. So
thanks, we appreciate that.
Let's get the discussion going.
There were a couple other of the myths in the 20 questions that came with some caveats. I'd love to go back and revisit some of them. Sure. I think one of them kind of relates to what we're talking about now, which is if it hasn't hit in a long time, it's more likely to hit. Even though that's not true, there are some progressive, majors and jackpots that change like the game state to make it a different expected value. Could you maybe separate those two things out and explain what legitimate things people might want to look for if they are looking for like a small edge on jackpots that are maxed out, for example? Yeah.
So the only time progressives are a plus EV or a plus expected value situation is if they are must win by or must hit by. And those must be clearly stated, usually by the progressive meter. So wherever it says it up there, Ainsworth, if you ever played an Ainsworth game, they're very common. It will say must win by 10,000, for example. The way those work is that whenever the game first starts for the first time or somebody hits it, the RNG picks a number randomly between the floor and the ceiling. So if it's 9,000 to 10,000, it's going to just randomly pick $9,435.23.
Okay.
And it stores that in memory. And as soon as that meter crosses that point, that person is awarded. And then it repeats itself. It randomly picks a range. A lot of people think it's weighted towards the end. Not on most of them. AGS slots does some of that trickery. I don't really like that. But most must win by and must hit by progressives, it becomes a plus EV when it's at a certain number. I don't know what that number is, but it's around like 9,850 out of 10,000 on a Ainsworth must hit by. So if you see it that high, it basically means that if the progressive is at 9,800, then you can probably put up to about 9,000 in the machine and still come out ahead. It may hit very, very soon within the first couple spins you play, or it may go all the way to the end, but people have calculated that out and figured out how much money it would take to get it to that point, factoring in that you're still going to get line pays and bonuses and stuff during that time, right? And so it's definitely a subculture of people out there that have learned the mathematics behind that kind of stuff. But that cannot be confused with all of the other progressives like you find on Dragon Link, Lightning Link, Dragon Cash, Huff and Puff, all those games. Those progressives have a fixed odds probability on every single spin. It doesn't matter if it's maxed out or not. And that's where a lot of people break down and start chasing because they see a maxed out on Dragon Link. It's got to hit soon, right? Because it's been sitting there at 5,000 for the last week and nobody's hit it. So it's got to be due soon. But that's not what's going on those. The probability is exactly the same every single spin. But what is happening is that it's secretly growing over that cap. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but let's say that the cap on the progressive is 5,000. You'll see it sitting there at 5,000, but it's still growing. That meter is still growing behind the scenes because by law, all progressives have to be paid back to the player. The casino cannot just keep whatever added progressives there are. That's why some games can't get pulled until the progressive is hit because they have to pay it back to the players, right? And so it actually continues to climb after that. And then whenever somebody hits it, it resets. And whatever amount over it was, it adds to the base.
Okay.
So that's why sometimes, and there's been videos of this where people have hit it when it's capped out and it resets and it's capped out again.
Wow. Meaning it hasn't hit in that long of a time.
So, and a lot of people, I mean, some of the myths that come out, they wait until it gets high and then they take the machine out of service because they don't want to pay the progressive. They can't get away with that.
So let me ask you, even though a maxed out major doesn't increase the probability of the major hitting, is it fair to say that the value, while not plus EV, is better than if the major wasn't? Like, it's better
Absolutely.
value?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you sit down at a bank, and then usually Dragon Links are in a bank, right? You have 5 or 6 machines, sometimes more. The grands are usually all shared, so that doesn't matter. But the majors are not. They're individual for each one of those. So gambling smart would be to look at the one that's the highest and play that one. Not because your odds are better, but because if you're going to hit it, why wouldn't you want to hit the one that's the highest? So that's the play. Another myth out there is that when they are capped out or they're getting really high, that it changes the probabilities of the base game, and that's completely false. They're not allowed to do any kind of trickery like that. Base game stays the same. The odds of getting that progressive are the same for every single machine.
Yeah, I think, I want to talk in more depth about RTP, but I think there's, even for myself especially, there's a lot of lack of clarity about how RTP is distributed across different features in a game and how it all kind of works. Before we move on to that, just want to make sure we go back to any of the other myths that had maybe some nuance to them. I wrote down hot and cold machines, and I think you said that maybe it's, is it just like a function of the way that trends happen, or is there actually any truth to this hot and cold machine idea?
So that's why I couldn't answer the question saying that no, there aren't hot and cold machines, because in randomness there has to be swings. If you didn't have swings of hot and cold, then I would question if it was actually random or not, if that makes sense. The example that I like to use is flipping a coin. We all know that flipping a coin is 50% heads or 50% tails. Okay, so how do you explain flipping a coin 5 times and you get heads every single time? Is that a hot quarter? Does that mean that the 6th one has to be tails because it's been heads so many times? No, the odds have not changed. It's still 50-50. That was a string of hot results, right? And so those things happen in randomness. And if you don't see that, if you just see a machine that is constantly on the hour paying, and then on the half hour doesn't, and then on the hour pays, and then on the half hour it doesn't, and then that repeats itself, that's not random. Something else is going on there. There's something fixed, right? But if it's all over the place, where you get 3 bonus rounds in a row, and then you suddenly don't get any bonus rounds, it's not because it's trying to realign itself with the RTP or anything like that. It's all about probabilities. There's a probability of hitting every single outcome on the game. And all of those are factored into a final number, which is that RTP setting. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, hot and coldness is something you feel, but it's not something that's programmed into the game design. Just because it's paid out a lot doesn't mean it needs to catch up. Or just because somebody put several thousand into a machine that it suddenly needs to start paying back, or they're not going to stay within their numbers. Okay, just for an example, this top dollar machine behind me, I've done somewhere around 2,600 pulls on it. It's currently set at 98%. It's currently paying back 142% after 2,000 pulls.
Wow.
Okay, so actually the casino is losing money on this machine. So a lot of people say, well, why there's something broken with it, right? I'm going to suddenly just start not getting anything for thousands of spins so it can get back in there. And no, that's not what's going to happen. But the more it gets played, once it reaches that 100,000, 200,000, 1 million pulls, you're going to see that number get closer and closer and closer, because it's just the law of large numbers. That's what's going to happen. Just like with the flipping of the coin, any short-term session of you doing that, you're going to get stuff all over the place. We did a fun thing when we did a live demonstration with some people. We had everybody come up and flip a coin 10 times, and we all recorded their results. And it was all over the place, right? There was one person that had 5 and 5, but everybody else, it was, 4 and 6, 3 and 7, 2 and 8, etc., all over the place. But if we force those people to flip it another 1,000 times, you're going to see that number shrink down to that 50%. The more often you do it. So slot machines are exactly the same way. The more that they're played, the more that will come in in line eventually, but it's not programmatically needing to change. There's no fancy algorithms that are changing when the bonus rounds are going to hit and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people feel that, but it's not necessary. It's just math. It's all math and probabilities, and it will work itself out eventually. Maybe not for you, but it will eventually.
Yeah, I started out in the space in the poker media and making poker content. And if you want to see some crazy stuff happen thanks to randomness, like it's unbelievable what the results can be that are totally random.
Yep.
Like you would never believe it.
Absolutely.
The main theme that I wanted to dig into with you in this call is how people's expectations compare to the reality of, like you're saying, the law of large numbers and volatility and what it really means when we're playing a few hundred or even a few thousand spins, because I feel like there's a big gap between what people think, to get an even distribution based on an RNG and what you're actually experiencing, even in maybe your lifetime of playing slots or something like that. So I'm curious if you could maybe break it down, and I'm hoping to connect it, to people who are playing at on a recreational level, and maybe they're showing up with a few $100s or a few $1,000s. And, I feel like a lot of or a risk is when people lose a lot more than they expect to more quickly. And they feel like, I just need to put in more money and I'm going to get back what's kind of owed to me here. And meanwhile, they're nowhere near anything like resembling getting back to a standard distribution of outcomes. So, what's your thoughts on that? And maybe we could start just a bit by talking about the games and how they actually play when it comes to, if we're saying 95% RTP, there's jackpots, there's base games. How does that really like show in practice when someone's going and playing 100 or thousands of spins?
Yeah. So try to think of it this way. Let's just say that the RTP was on an individual session and it was set to 90%. That meant that every single time you play a slot and you put $100 in, you're going to lose $10. Think if it was set up that way. Would anybody play slots? The answer would be no.
Not for very long.
Because you would always lose. Every single time you played, you would always lose $10, right? And so the next time you go with 90, and then you leave with 80, and then you go with 80, and you leave with 70. You see what I'm saying? So the RTP can't be factored into such a small sample size, because then nobody would play. And so that's why they expanded into very, very large numbers of probabilities, okay? The best thing that you can relate RTP to is, let's say that you had 30 different games. They're all different slot machines, okay? But they're all set at 90%, which is the national average, by the way. For most casinos, the national average is 90%. So 10% hold for the casino, 90% back for the players. Maybe not you individually, but overall, 90%. It's pretty fair, I think. It's still gambling, but I think it's pretty fair. But consider there's 30 games. They're all set at 90%. How they're going to get to that 90% is much different, and that is the volatility. Basically, the swings on either side of that line, which is the RTP, okay? On the other end, you have the huff and puffs and the higher volatility games where you're on the biggest roller coaster they have, where it's like a giant dip, and then, you got the loops and everything else like that. That would be a higher volatility slot. They're both going to end up at 90% after about 1 million or 2 million pulls. But again, how they get there is just a different path. One, you're going to just see a lot of swings on either side, a lot of hot and coldness that I'm using in quotes. You're going to see a string of not getting anything, but then get a bonus round and make it all back, right? Those are the higher volatility games. They're high risk, high reward. And this volatility just isn't in slot machines. It's in the stock market. It's all over the place. There's certain stocks that are more riskier than others. And the reason they're riskier is because they have a lot of this, right? And that's why most people say don't invest in those, invest in like mutual funds and stuff, which are just kind of slowly over time, that kind of stuff. I'm not giving you investment advice. I'm just saying as a relation. But it's the same thing here, right? So what can you do? What should you do? So let's say that you're going to go in with $1,000 and your goal is to try to last as long as possible, which I think should be everybody's goal, because you got to remember it's for entertainment. Going and playing slots or any other games, you're not there to make money. I know that's what everybody thinks you're supposed to be doing. Like, why shouldn't you go? You go to a casino to make money. No, you should go to the casino to have fun with the hopes of making money. Like, that's the way you should be saying it. So what do? My recommendation is ignore RTP, because number one, you don't know what it is. You don't know what an RTP is set on any of these machines in the casino, and there's no way to test for it. Okay, you would have to play that game hundreds of thousands of times to get any kind of general idea, especially the newer games, on what the RTP setting is on that machine. But what you can identify in the short term is the variance or the volatility. What are the swings like on this game? Are you a risky person? Do you like to just go in for the $1,000 and get it over with real quick? Then go play a high volatility game like the Huff and Puff or something like that, and just hope that you get something good. But if you're trying to make it last, play a lower volatility game. You give up those big progressive potentials and the big bonus rounds and all that kind of stuff. But you're going to be there a lot longer because you have more churn. You have more coin out and coin in, and you can kind of play steady, earn those comps, stay there a longer time, things like that. There's nothing wrong with playing either one of those, okay? A lot of people say, oh, you guys are always crapping all over high volatility games. No. We play them. But there's a right time to play them. And the right time to play them is when you feel like being risky and you know what's about to happen, because it could drain you very, very fast and you don't get any spins. And what usually happens is people are like, I got rinsed at the Cosmo last night. Never played the Cosmo. They tightened all their machines up. No, that's not what happens. I always question, what games were you playing? And then they rattle them all off. And I'm like, well, that's what happened. You played high volatility games. You should expect that, right? So how do you know if it's high or low volatility? It's not easy, because although the manufacturers have a volatility index for every game that they produce, it's on documentation that's unfortunately not available to the public. Now, some manufacturers are better than others. Every is really good because they put volatility on most of their games on their website. You can go and look it up. It's like a range from 1 to 5.
Okay.
I wish more manufacturers would do this so people understand what they're walking into. But here's what I do. Especially if it's a new game I've never played before, watch YouTube. Watch somebody play it either in a live setting or for 20 minutes straight. Okay, Vegas Matt's good at this because they'll sit down and they'll play a game for 20 minutes, good or bad, and show it to you. Now go watch somebody else play that same game, and you will start to feel what the volatility of that game is. How frequent does the bonus come around? If the bonus comes around, is it very lucrative most of the time, or is it kind of, maybe it's not worth playing because the bonus rounds are infrequent and the amounts you got out of the bonus rounds are not very good. That's kind of a clue that the volatility of that game may be a little higher, and you need to understand that going in. That could be your riskier bet. So that's how I recommend to look. You don't have to spend any money on it. You can, if you want to, just play low bets and kind of feel the game out. But you're not feeling for RTP. That's the big misconception, is people think you're feeling the RTP. You cannot feel the RTP in the short term like that. But volatility, you can absolutely feel in the short term.
Yeah, it seems like something like the same thing might apply to volatility, where the sample size is still pretty small, and you can experience what feels like high volatility or low volatility, but just based on the randomness of the outcomes in that really small sample size.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example. Let's just say it's set at 90% and it's a low volatility game. So the range on either side, the deviation would probably be anywhere from 50 to maybe 150 on the plus side. Okay, so you'll see it down there and you'll see it up here, but it'll always kind of get in that range. Now, a high volatility game, that expands. So it may be 20% and 180%. It's on either side, if that makes sense. So that's why I don't think it's a good idea, because there's a look at all these places that you can land. I'd rather land where it's tighter and closer into that payback percentage than out here, because there's more opportunity for you to not hit something. I'd rather hit something, and even if it's small, to keep me going, or to cash out and leave, those types of things.
There's a couple of interesting things I'd love to dig into with you there. First, I'm curious, do you think that, even say taking volatility out of the equation, and you're dealing with 90% RTP, like, you can do the math and start to figure out that enough spins, you're you're just, even if you were perfect on RTP, you'd be losing your money. Do you think that there's a disconnect with people's understanding of that, like basic math, where it's like you just don't understand that you're actually just paying 10% every time you spin for hundreds and hundreds of spins, and this is it often, a losing session is just the most likely outcome because of that?
Yeah, it is. You got to think that. And I'll use the example of Double Diamond because we do have what's called the par sheet for Double Diamond. It's something that's been released a long time ago. And the par sheet is basically an explanation of all the probabilities built into the game. So we know the probabilities of hitting a cherry, we know the probabilities of hitting 3 double bars, and the probabilities of hitting 3 double diamonds. And the probabilities of a losing spin is on that game around 84%. So 84% of the time you're going to spin on that game and get nothing, right? And so everybody's like, oh, how is it 90% if 84% of the time you're losing, right? And the reason is because when you do win, it's stacked, right? You have very large hits and you have very small hits. And so a game that's at 90%, it could start to go 85, 82, this is how it's playing, 81, 78, and then someone hits the 3 double diamonds, it jumps right back up to 92%. And then, the probabilities will play out, but eventually it's just going to start hovering and get right to that line. Mm-hmm. And so the probabilities is what really makes it feel like you get a lot of losing spins. That's the way it's supposed to work, right? Everybody has those dreams where you just sit down and you walk up to a machine and hit it for the first time and you get a jackpot. I mean, you wake up and you're like, damn it. Everybody has those, right? But that's never going to be the case, right? There's not going to be a machine that's going to keep paying and paying and paying like that. Is it possible? Yes, because of randomness and the hot and cold thing. I've had some crazy runs on slot machines where it keeps bonusing and bonusing and bonusing. That's not a tail saying, oh, you better stay on that machine because it's hot. It's in a paying mode. That's not a tail. But that can happen. And in those cases, you are riding a positive RTP at that point, but not because it's designed to do that. You just got lucky. And that's what is causing, you're just hitting the probabilities at the right point. So, I threw a lot of numbers out there, but most spins are going to be losing spins. That's just the way it works. But when you do win, you have the potential of getting a multiplier of your bet size back. And then that's where all of the pay comes into place. It's a very small percentage of spins when you factor in losing spins and winning spins. Winning spins is a very small percentage of what is actually getting paid out, but it's what is distributed between those wins, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And it seems to play into the psychology of why people find it so rewarding to hit winning spins, because it's not happening every spin and you don't know when it's going to happen. And it's often like an outsized result compared to like a bunch of kind of small losses over time, and then boom. And this variable reward schedule seems really, really powerful for people.
One of the things I wanted to plug is that we've created, I don't like the word methods and stuff like that because it's kind of suggestive that there's a way to trick machines into paying you, right? But we've created a method, and the concept here is to take $100 or whatever your starting session is, and to split it up into 10 divisible chunks. So $10 bills, 10 $10 bills. Pick any slot you want, max out around $1 a spin, don't go too crazy. But put the $10 in and play until you get a spin where you win more than what you bet back. When you do, cash out and take the ticket and put it away. And then put the $10 into that machine or go to another machine and do the same thing. What this is teaching you is to identify all wins, because when is it enough? Mm-hmm. When is it? That's where we get tripped up. You bet 3 and you win 15. What do most people say? Bullets. You just bet 3 and you won $15. So you are $12 ahead. If you start realizing and capturing all of the wins, not just the small ones, because what happens over time is we're never satisfied. We get a $40 win and we're like, oh, that's pretty good. But what do? We're like, I think I'm going to get the 3 red 7s for 100. And you just keep playing, right? And you're always playing down to 0, chasing a bigger win and a bigger win. And this is all the psychology of slot machines, right? This is what they're training you to do. And so what we try to do is create a way that you identify every single win and take it out. And everybody that's done this has gone home with money. They may not have gone home with more than what they left. Some have, but they all go home with something. And it stops the cycle of always playing down the zero to chase the big win. You should always accept that you're going to lose most often. But I'm telling you, if you identify even the small wins, they will add up over time. And you're getting a lot of entertainment. You're going slower because you're having to do $10 at a time, or you're moving to different machines. Make a competition out of it. Dave and I do this all the time, where we'll go through this, and then whoever's a loser has to give the other person their ticket, whatever they had left. And it's $200 of fun right there. You're right. And it's one. These are the things that we are trying to teach people. You cannot game the system. You will lose over time. The longer you play, you will lose. Every gambler should know that. That's just the way it is, right? But in the short term, you can have some successes along the way if you are very disciplined and you look at those things and you understand all the stuff that we're talking about on this show and others. You will get to become a better gambler and a more, disciplined gambler.
I mean, it seems like it applies to all kinds of casino games where people are kind of have the attitude like, oh, it's supposed to be 95% RTP. How do I keep leaving with 0? Why aren't I leaving with 95? And I guess our bankroll really can't last long enough to overcome the volatility of machines that's generally set up for you to lose the majority of the time. Guess what? You're going to lose the money you came with before anything else ever evens out most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's like, let's say you bet $3 and you won 100. That is a huge return. It's 33 times your bet. Most people just don't stop there. They'll keep playing, or they'll go raise their bet and start playing $5 machines or whatever the case is. Most people just don't accept it. They're if I get a hand pay, I'll stop. And some people do. But then that's not enough. I want to get over 2,000, and then I want to get over 3,000, and then I'll stop playing. And you see the vicious cycle. Like over time, you're training yourself to never be satisfied with any win unless it's a certain amount. But you're kind of figuring that out along the way. As gamblers, it's what we do. Oh, that was an awesome hit. Cash out. I'm going home. People don't say that. They don't say that. Well, they should, but they don't, right? I
guess, kind of like the flip side of it, maybe that message where we're not there to make money. We're probably not even there to leave with money at the, when it comes down to it. We're there to have fun. And maybe if you can accept that the money that you bring in there, like I'm willing to accept that I'm going to lose it because I'm having fun and because I do have a chance at getting lucky and something happening, then maybe it's a bit more, responsible to not be leaving with money.
Well said.
You mentioned that, for one of the games, you actually had a sheet that quantified the probability of different outcomes. I've always been really curious because I talk to people that have been playing slots their whole lives, and maybe they've had one major in their entire life, and I'm curious, like, could you ballpark any kind of actual numbers for these kind of outcomes, or is it just so all over the place? Like, I feel like people don't have an accurate kind of expectation about what the odds actually are of hitting big.
See, that's the problem, is you would have to sit down and play 100,000 spins, or sometimes even more on these higher volatility games to have all the probabilities play out. And so, and even then, let's take the example of a double diamond. The odds of getting 3 double diamonds is 1 in 46,000.
Really?
So it's pretty high. Wow. And that's a low volatility game. So if you think about that, you would have to do a 10 million, 20 million pulls before you could figure that out yourself, because you could hit it in 10 spins. You could hit it in 100,000 spins. You could hit it in 75,000 spins. You see where I'm going? The overall probability is 1 in 46,000, but that does not mean that you can get a little clicker and count until you get to 46,000 and say, here comes the double diamonds. That's not the way it works. It's just the average. And so probabilities of things like cherries or simple line hits, you could figure those out. But the higher you go up and the probabilities are higher, you're going to need a lot more spins to be able to come up with that. One of the things that I really hope the industry changes on this is I think probabilities should be posted. I don't know why they don't. I think this is something that,
Do you think it would
they do
just
on
put
lottery
people
tickets.
off,
Every
though,
lottery
because
ticket you
it's so-
buy, every scratch ticket, every lotto drawing, they have the odds of everything on there.
Huh.
I don't understand why they can't release that, because I think it's very important information so people understand before they sit down at the game and they think, oh, I'm going to hit this progressive. And then they look at it, it's like, oh, it's 1 in 3 million. It's like, well, I might change my mind, right?
Maybe that's what they're afraid of. It's an interesting question because, similar with volatility, I think even though it's counterintuitive, it would actually be better for the casino if people had more realistic expectations, because more people are put off due to just like losing more than they think they deserve or something, or, worse outcomes are a result of that happening. So, I feel like it might actually be in their best interest for people to have a more realistic idea of what they're getting into, because it's going to be more sustainable that way.
You're right. I mean, this is why casinos have such a bad stigma, is because they're very quiet about everything. So are the manufacturers. And we're trying to change that, but it's hard because, just like you said, and I'm going to say this because I've said it before, casinos love dumb players. They love people that are drunk off their ass. Why do you think they give you free drinks? Because all logic and reasoning is out the window. You're going to just keep playing and keep playing and keep playing. It's working. Them being tight-lipped about everything is working. It's keeping people playing more. Now, I think the opposite. I think just like you, I think the more educated gambler and the more responsible gambler is more likely to return, because they are in control. They're not letting the casino and the manufacturers and the slot machines control them, which is how it is right now. And I think by reversing that and putting yourself in control, I think you're more likely to return because you have that confidence built up. Yeah. I mean, how many stories have you heard this where it's just like, I went to Aria for the first time and I dropped $5,000 and didn't win a single hand pay. Screw that place. They had the odds tight as hell. Everything, tight ass slots. Never go there. All that kind of stuff. And think about what that's done to Aria. They have the same odds as everybody else on the strip. There's nothing different about Aria. They didn't change anything. But because people don't understand that, they don't understand how RTP works and how slot machines work and volatility and all that stuff, they are going to make that claim and that statement, and it hurts Aria because that person's never going to go back there. They had a bad session, and then everybody they tell is likely not to return. So I think the opposite, like you just said. Like, I think if we get this out and people start to become more transparent, and there will be a casino, I promise you, in our lifetime, there will be a casino that's going to be like, listen, we're going to put it all out there. We're going to post the odds on the side of the machine. We're going to tell you everything you want to know. Last time the machine was opened, all that kind of stuff. And just be very transparent. And I think you might see a change in attitude towards casinos. Yeah. I don't have any problems with casinos. They're a business, right? Do they do some weird tactics sometimes? Yes. But ultimately, it's a gambling establishment. Like, there's just it's a business, and that's what they are. You can't really be frustrated with them, and it's all regulated. They can't go in there and just do whatever they want, whenever they want. It's all regulated. And so, I don't know. We'll see. I hope in our lifetime.
I also think maybe they're overestimating their ability to stop gamblers from gambling. Like, people don't even care. You can tell them exactly what it is, and they'll be like, great. Like, I don't care. I'm supposed to. You're not going to stop me from doing it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Another, we were talking about volatility and, coin in and this kind of stuff. And I feel like another, sort of downside about lack of clarity around volatility is that, playing a low vol, they're not, they're giving you comps and basing your rating on how much coin in. And so if you're playing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lower volatility machine is just going to give you a better return in terms of like your loyalty program and stuff. And when people put their limited bankroll into a high volatility machine, not only is it going to be a lot less time of entertainment, but you're probably going to see a big difference in the kind of offers that you're getting. Is that true?
You're absolutely correct. 100%. People propose to us, what's better for comps? Go play a dollar machine with my $100, or to go play one spin in the high limit room at $100. And that's easy. I mean, playing the dollar machine is your best bet when it comes to the loyalty. They will see that you, because the chances are chances are if you play the dollar machine, within the 33 spins that you get off of $100 betting $3 a spin, you're going to get something. You're going to get some coin out that you can turn back in or whatever you decide to do with it. That's going to generate more comps than just doing a Hail Mary, one spin, because that's not what they're interested in on the comp side. They know people do that. I got an extra $100. Let's just go for broke and see what happens. But that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for longevity, consistency. You return, you come every 3 months, you play the same machines in the same time period. Like, that's what they want to see. And if you go off of the radar with that, then you're less likely to get noticed and to get the same comps as if you were just plowing through it. Entertainment value.
Yeah. It seems like such a great message that people are really keying in on now, which is just this idea of treat it as it's an entertainment cost, and it's an entertainment activity. Like, when you look at the revenue from Vegas in particular, the amount of money that casinos are making from gaming is going down, even though their revenue is going up, and people are having a more well-rounded experience. So I feel like whatever can help people, we were talking about this, like people having realistic expectations in order to be more sustainable. It sure seems like it's going to help the resorts more and more, considering that people are spending a lot of their money away from the tables nowadays as well.
Yeah. Which, everybody should do. If you go to Vegas, take those breaks, do your $100 session, and then go check out the resort, go to the pool, go eat dinner, go to a show. Dude, there's plenty there. Just like you said, there's plenty there to do in Vegas. And if you do that every single time you go out there, chances are you're not going to have to pay for all that stuff again.
Yeah.
You'll be able to get free rooms. You'll be able to get free show tickets and food and stuff like that, and still play the games that you love. You're just not being reckless about it. So I factor that in, especially going to Vegas. Like, it's how much would I spend if I just went out there and paid for everything? It would probably be $1,000 for a 4-night stay. You factor in hotel prices and resort fees and parking fees and food and all that kind of stuff. I could easily spend that much, but if I get it all comped, well, that's $1,000 that I have in gambling money that I would have spent on just going out there, and then I get to have fun and maybe come home cash, right? It's just, you got to think about it that way and not try to think about it as a money-making opportunity going out there, and I think your attitude will change.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're not there to make money, but also there are, like you're saying, ways to leverage the opportunity to your advantage a little bit, especially if you value gambling and playing slots as part of your entertainment experience. It sure seems like there are ways to have a better or a worse experience. And I so appreciate you and Dave and everything that you guys do, because there's not all the voices in the world that are working hard like you guys to try to bring this information to people. And it's funny because it's not like you're trying to say like don't gamble or don't have fun. It's just like it must hurt, like you said before, it must hurt when you see people making some of these mistakes just based on like lack of understanding. And to be fair, the information's not super.
You try to save everybody, but you can't. But if I can just save one person, that's good enough for me, right?
Okay. So we've talked a lot about land-based slots, and online slots are becoming more and more common. We've got sweepstakes casinos. We've got regulated real money online casinos in a number of states now. Here in Canada, we've got all kinds of gray market casinos that are available online. So I'm curious, from your perspective and, the people that you talk to, what's your take on it as a whole, and what are some of the unique risks that come along with it when you're talking about having access potentially to slots on your phone, on your computer all the time?
Right. Where do I start? So I think the first thing is, let's break down the different types of casinos that you mentioned. So the ones that we recommend the most are the ones that are licensed by the states. So FanDuel, Caesars Online, BetMGM, you've heard of these before, only available in a handful of states. Those are all regulated the same way that the land-based casinos are. So the RNGs are tested, payback percentage are tested and controlled and audited, all those things. So I feel very comfortable with people playing in those. You have some other ones that are starting to come up. Horseplay is one of them, where they are fully U.S. based, and they also are licensed. It uses live horse racing data from about 18 states, which are the states that you're allowed to gamble with. It's also a very good one because it's very low betting, and they have a lot of controls in there for you to, limit yourself for how much you play per day or per week or whatever the case is. So there's some responsible stuff in there. And then you got everything else. Sweepstakes casinos, we personally don't recommend playing them. There's nothing inherently wrong with them, but you need to understand what you're getting into. Sweepstakes casinos kind of operate in this gray area of the law, and some of them gotten in some pretty big trouble. And the main concern that we have about the sweepstakes-based casinos is that the servers are not U.S. based, so they can't be regulated here in the States. They're all located overseas in different locations. We also don't have insight into how they regulate their RNGs or their return to player. I'm not saying this happens, but the thing that we don't know is that what if you signed up, deposited $100 and then you win, you do really well. And then after you start depositing more money, you just start losing and losing and losing, and then you're caught in the cycle of depositing stuff like that. It sounds like it's far-fetched or almost like a conspiracy theory, but the thing is we don't know if that's going on or not. And because that is not there, we think it's too risky. So we try to recommend staying away from those just because of that. And funny enough, even if you do engage with those right now, a lot of states are starting to shut them down. It's now, I think, up to 4 or 5 states that have blocked it. Some are actually even going after the players, it seems, for signing up for it. It's just, it's in a legal gray area. And so because of that, I think caution should be advised. The other big flag is, and we get emails all the time from these guys asking us to promote them and stuff like that. But I always go and read the terms of service. And a lot of these inside of the terms say that they value whatever the sweepstakes coin is. Right now it's 1-to-1, right? So $1 is one sweepstakes coin, but it's a virtual currency. So at any time they could devalue that if they wanted to. Now it'd be bad business for them. They'd get wiped off the face of the earth if they did that. But what if they knew they were going to get shut down soon and they decided to devalue that? These are the things that you need to be asking yourself before you engage in those casinos. Again, not saying they're bad, but you need to know what you're getting into. I'll say that. If you are going to play sweepstakes casinos, do $100 at a time. Do $100, play it, cash out the 100, wait for that 100 to get deposited into your account before you put the next 100 in and play, just so you're a little safe in case something does go wrong, right? I don't want to hear horror stories of people that have $20,000, $30,000 in sweepstakes coins just sitting in there, and then something happens where they get shut down, and then there's a question of whether you're going to get that money or not. I mean, you got to be careful with stuff like that. So if you're going to play, think about the different things that you need to do to help minimize that risk.
No, I think those are all really valid points. I think we're in a situation where, especially the younger generation is like, they're online. They're more used to playing games online. You're even seeing gambling mechanics entering video games, and you're seeing online slots adopting more entertainment and interactive video game mechanics. So there's definitely, and with streamers and all this stuff, there's definitely a blurring of the lines. So I think it's something that is really important to address, and to, like you said, we're not banning it or anything, but rather educating people so that they can do it safely, the same way that you guys especially try to do for land-based casinos. I know, some of the things that we've learned about sweepstakes is that the sweepstakes casino, like the company, makes a big difference. There's everything from really reputable companies to complete fly-by-night startups that have been around for a week. So I think, like, looking at the track record of these businesses, some of which are massive companies, can lend some credibility, as well as the game developers. A lot of the games that are featured on sweepstakes on reputable sites they're licensed from reputable game developers that are tested and are put through that stuff, because those same games are also available on some of the licensed real money gambling casinos that you mentioned. So those are some things to look for. And I think, like you said, treating it as an entertainment cost and minimizing the risk by trying it out for a reasonable amount of money is a really great way to at least mitigate some of the risks, especially of just having it in your pocket, because it's so easy, which can be a good thing for people that don't live anywhere near a casino, but comes with a lot of its own risks.
That's true.
That we want to make sure people are aware of. Well, I so appreciate this in-depth conversation. Yep. I feel like I learned a lot. I was curious, is there, and I forgot to say it before, but I hope everyone watching will go to Gamble Smart and subscribe and check out all of the content that you guys have. There's slots play as well as an amazing amount of educational content on your channel. We're massive fans of your channel. But I also wanted to ask, is there anything exciting or anything that you want to plug while you're on the show before we wrap things up?
Yeah, so a couple things actually. I'm doing a no slots summer. I kind of slipped up a little bit on the cruise, not bad, but I need to put myself in check. And so we're actually forming a group, kind of like a no shave November type thing, for anybody who wants to go throughout the summer without going to a casino. And so we're going to have a little group of people together that we can help support each other and all that. So we're real excited about that. We'll have a video out next week talking about that. And then Dave is going to be out in the Northeast coming up in July. We'll have all that stuff on our website. And then of course our big G2E event this year is going to be humongous. At the Downtown Grand. We hope you can make that. All that stuff will be on our website very soon at gamblesmart.net. So
awesome, man. Yeah, I met you guys for the first time at last year's G2E.
I remember. Yeah.
What a blast. This whole
this time we won't be on crates. We're going to have an official.
I thought it was cool.
Official meetup. Yeah.
No, we'll be happy to help promote all your guys' events. And I know we're having Dave on the show later this week, and we look forward to chatting with him about all your upcoming stuff. So thank you so much, Marc. We really appreciate your time, and can't wait to do it again. It's always a pleasure.
Of course, man. Take care, guys.